Hello.
What's up?
What's up?
Tiger cat.
Tiger cat, bingo cat.
And dog chewing a ball.
Yeah, I was going to ask if you guys can hear that.
Nope, not at all.
We definitely will take them away.
Not at all.
We
You need a dog that's more calm like this guy right now.
Yeah.
He's just chilling.
A podcast about bourbon and the ones who drink it. This is Bourbon Matters. Welcome to Bourbon Matters. I'm Jake.
I'm Dan.
and I'm Gold Eagle Jake.
And today we're going to get an update from Dan about the...
This topic changed like from what it was 3 seconds ago.
What?
It was your story with my input added, and now it's
No,
me
yeah.
telling the story. Jeez.
Well, no, I'm going to explain
Okay.
the lead.
Okay.
But, I mean, the focus of our conversation, I think, is going to be about the Estate Whiskey Alliance.
Okay.
But now I'm thrown off. All right. Anyway, before we jump into that, though, I did come across this pretty funny story that I wanted to bring up. So in the EU, you're no longer allowed to use the terminology rye whiskey on any products, which has actually been a rule for over 20 years, since 2003. But the EU decided today to start enforcing it. And it actually stems from an agreement with Canada and the EU, where Canada wanted rye whiskey as a protected product class. So now a lot of the European rye whiskeys, like Stauning, I don't know how to pronounce it, Thai in Denmark, and Cairo in Finland, are up in arms because they're like, what the fuck? Because they're all branded as, rye whiskeys. And one of the, let me get the guy's name, Alex Munch, who's the chief marketing officer and co-founder of Stauning Whiskey, said that banning the use of rye whiskey is akin to saying that no one outside of France should be able to use the word wine.
Is this one of your Wikipedia articles?
No, it's real. It's from
Yeah, it's real. It came out yesterday.
No, this is the first I'm hearing of this.
Did it come out, Jake? Did that article come out yesterday?
yes, but it is real.
Okay, so it came out on April
I've confirmed.
1st. So it is from yesterday. Okay.
For good context, yes, yesterday is April Fool's. We are recording this on April 2nd. So now Jake is getting a little red and checking.
There's multiple sources are saying the same thing.
Never lied to him. He's never read any.
Wikipedia.
So I don't know. I find it hard to believe that this has been a thing since 2003, and then all of a sudden on April Fool's Day, 22 years later, they decide to make it official.
So
this is a typical Jake thing. Yes, this is real. The sources say it's real.
There's at least two different sources.
Oh, two sources. That's like half the internet. Holy hell.
Oh, fine. Man. You want me to? I'll find somebody else.
This is why you don't ever let Jake do research and bring things to the show.
I mean, I think it's cool. It's adding some spice.
I love how you almost spit whiskey out.
Get it? It's adding some spice.
Yeah, I get it. I get it. While Jake's trying to figure this out, the other thing we could just do.
Whiskey Wash is reporting it too.
Okay, so Whiskey Wash has never been an April Fool's prank.
They published it today on the 2nd.
All right. So, two sources.
So, literally everyone has labeled this as a forgotten EU trade agreement. So, this is real as far as I can tell.
According to Google AI, he's correct. And it says, as of April 1st, a long-forgotten EU trade agreement with Canada prevents European distilleries from labeling their rye-based spirits as rye whiskey.
Yep.
That is very interesting.
Yeah. What's funny is, the example they keep giving is Stawning, but like Stawning said that they actually are legally required to call their whiskey rye whiskey in America, in the U.S., but because of this agreement, they're not allowed to put it on any other bottles that go to other markets. So it's an interesting situation.
I'm still going to go on record and say I don't fully believe this until some time passes. But it seems from my quick search that this is true or could be true. But yeah, it's not even an official designation for Canada, right? It's just,
no, it's not.
They're just like, we make a lot of rye whiskey. We've been doing it for a long time, and you can't put rye on it. And it's like, out of respect, somebody just decided, we're not going to do that.
Yeah.
If this is real, this will be one of the things where it's like, oh, well, we're going to put a new extension on this and decide at a later time because we didn't think it through.
It's up for renegotiation next year. So it seems like they're going to comply through the end of this year, and then it's up for debate again.
I mean, you can't just decide it out of nowhere and then, destroy all your bottles you've already purchased and labels.
Yeah, I would assume that they will probably be able to use whatever inventory they have, but yeah, it's a really weird situation.
Yeah, I mean, we could just do the whole world a favor and just get rid of rye whiskey completely, and then we wouldn't have the problem. It seems like a simple solution that most people would enjoy. I would be for that.
I don't know.
No. That's
Just
almost dumber than this article coming out on April 1st.
Just because you have a subpar palate doesn't mean everyone else needs to suffer.
Yeah. Subpar. It's exactly what it is.
All right.
Exactly what it is.
I just thought that was funny. And wanted to bring it up.
Yeah, I'm gonna reach out to my Stawning guy and see what he thinks and what they're talking about on their end, because they're huge on promoting the fact that they're rye whiskey, specifically Danish rye whiskey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean it's gonna the like conflict between the U.S. regulations and the EU regulations is really, really interesting.
Yeah, well, U.S. is not going to comply. No. We're going to keep making rye.
Yeah, especially because we're on such good terms. We're on such good terms with Canada right now that we'll definitely do whatever Canada wants.
Mm-hmm. All right, anything else about that?
No. I think we should make a note to revisit on the next episode if we hear more, because I think there's going to be more coming out about this.
Yeah.
And this is the first time I'm learning about it while we're recording, so.
Yeah. I'm still skeptical.
So, we'll pivot to the Maker's Mark story. So, Maker's Mark is launching a new sub-brand called Star Hill Farm. It will be a wheat whiskey, which will be their first new mash bill, and I think possibly
they threw away the original mash bill.
Yeah, since they made the change in the 80s.
Their only new mash bill. I don't think they ever changed.
Didn't they have the original one and threw that away?
Yeah, they made a change in
when what's his name took over, Samuel.
Yeah. I I can't remember when that was. I want to say it
Did
was in
they?
the 80s.
Yeah, like a long
But-
time ago, they threw the original mash bill away because they said it sucked.
Yeah. That's the whole thing with like his wife was making like bread, and they started using bread like recipes to try and build their mash bill replacement.
So I don't know. After a quick search, I'm seeing Maker's Mark has never changed their mash bill, and that's the story that I've always heard.
I had heard the
And
one. Am I thinking about a different distillery that had the that threw away the old mash bill?
I could have sworn that it was.
I don't know. I've been on many tours there, and I know they always talk about how like we've never changed anything. This was the original recipe. The only thing that Bill changed was he introduced the Maker's Mark 46, which is the
Yeah.
first ever finished whiskey that was regularly available as a core SKU on the market.
Samuel family had been making whiskey for 6 generations. Quality of the whiskey made at the family distillery wasn't great. Bill Samuel Sr. decided to try a premium whiskey. Another prize his father prevented him from trying. He purchased a distillery down the road in a limestone spring, began to work his formula. His wife Maggie baked loaves of bread with different grain combinations to figure out taste profiles that Bill Sr. wanted. Legend says he burned the old family recipe upon tasting the new whiskey. Maggie named it Maker's Mark after the makers of her. Probably the Maker's Mark,
So-
the name brand probably hasn't changed
Yeah.
it.
Yeah,
But what they were making is different than what Bill's making.
yeah, I'm seeing the mash bill has been the same since
Yeah.
1954.
Yeah. So it's
Okay.
probably
So,
since they
yeah, that's it
changed
then.
to Maker's Mark. But yeah.
The only thing
without-
Go ahead.
I was just saying, since they've been Maker's Mark, they haven't changed. But when they
Right.
changed the recipe, they changed the name to Maker's Mark. Is the old
Yeah, no.
Samuel.
The only thing they did change at certain points, and I believe it was in the 80s, they changed the proof of
Yeah.
Makers.
Yep.
They changed it to 80 and then back up to 90.
But anyways, they're making a wheat whiskey.
Yeah, so they're making a wheat whiskey, and I guess the thing that's going to make it unique is that it's going to be, at least to some degree, made from grains that will be part of the on-site regenerative farming program on the Star Hill Farms grounds, which is cool, and ties into some of that estate whiskey conversation and discussion we had last year. So Dan has some updates on that.
Yeah, so that was back, I believe, probably the grain to glass episode we did with Heaven Hill's super exciting grain to glass recipe. It's never had been done in the past. It can never be duplicated. He said sarcastically. So what this is stemming from is we talked in that episode a little about something that was starting to form called the Estate Whiskey Alliance. And that was a movement inside the whiskey industry for whiskey to have an actual definition around what estate whiskey is, what estate distilled means, things like that. With wine, that's the big thing is estate. It has to come from one winery. It comes from the grapevines that they grow at the estate. Everything has to come from that estate. And obviously when I was at Whiskey Acres, that was a big thing because we are about as estate as you can get. Besides not malting our own barley, everything else is grown there. And then the University of Kentucky wanted to start this. All right, let's define what estate whiskey is. Let's create a credential program for it. Let's spell this out. And then for people to be able to use the word estate distilled or estate whiskey on the bottle, it has to meet these criteria and it has to have our official logo on it so that you know that it is truly estate whiskey for people that are looking for that style of product. It's run by the University of Kentucky. Some of the big distilleries in it are Jim Beam and Maker's Mark were some of the original people into it. Whiskey Acres is part of it. I've been out of Whiskey Acres for 4 months now, so I can't remember everybody Frey Ranch has recently joined the alliance as well. The biggest thing, and one thing we talked about in the Grain to Glass episode, is what makes it estate whiskey, and like what's that definition going to be. And a lot of the smaller distilleries, i.e., Whiskey Acres, and what even call Frey Ranch, and part of that is a pretty small craft distiller. They're a lot larger than Whiskey Acres, but still pretty small in comparison to a lot of to makers and things like that. Our concern is, like, when you look at makers on their property, if you go there, I've not been there, but if you go there, they have a bunch of small sample wheat fields. And the concern was for these big guys to be able to call themselves estate whiskey, they're going to be like, all right, we're going to grow 100 acres of wheat on our distillery grounds. Wheat is 15% of our mash bill. So 1% of our wheat will be the wheat that we grow on our estate, and then we'll be able to call it estate whiskey because something was grown there. So it went back and forth quite a bit. They have the website up now. There's not a lot of information on it, but they do have the Estate Whiskey Alliance set up. Basically what it boiled down to, for yourself to be able to be called estate whiskey, and then as a distillery, you have to pay money to be part of the Whiskey Alliance, Estate Whiskey Alliance. The criteria the whiskey has to meet is at least 2/3 of the mash bill grains are grown on estate owned or controlled land. Is the basic depth. There's some other things as well, but that's the biggest thing. So the biggest thing to start with on that, or the most important words, are the owned or controlled land. That means either the distillery owns that land or they're renting that land. That's one of the biggest things that a lot of people don't understand with farming is a lot of times you don't own the land, you're just renting out the ground from somebody else. And you need to have that in there, especially when you're looking at bigger distilleries. I mean, even at Whiskey Acres, they got 2,000 acres. I don't know for sure, but I think around 1,500 of it is rented land, and they only own about 500 or 600. So even a smaller style farm like that, which not all that's used for the distillery by any means, but 100 acres would be what Maker's Mark could produce in a day. Basically, is 100 acres. If they're doing a full wheat whiskey and they had 100 acres of wheat, that'd be a day worth of distillation right there. So you need a lot of ground. So it's owned or controlled, means you're renting it, you're farming it. And 2/3 of the mash bill. Now, wine, everything has to be grown on the estate. The big difference with whiskey is the farther south you go, barley doesn't grow well. I mean, rye doesn't even really grow too well much farther south of where we are. Mm-hmm. So for them to allow distilleries, knowing that the majority of distilleries are down south, to be able to qualify for this, there has to be something, because I can tell you almost all the big distilleries down south are getting their barley shipped in. Now, it's not a third of the mash bill by any means, but we had to find common ground that we thought worked for everybody. So if you meet this criteria along with a few other things, you pay a fee every year to the Estate Whiskey Alliance. You can now have the Estate Whiskey Alliance logo on your bottles, and that will be the proof that this is an estate-grown, estate-distilled whiskey. And that's really going to be the only way to tell if it is a proven estate whiskey or not. The other good thing about it, too, is now all these distilleries are working together. I know Whiskey Acres is even doing some research projects for the Estate Whiskey Alliance. It's all run out of Kentucky. But this is a way for makers to be able to have their own estate distilled whiskey now, because the wheat they're growing on their property, they can make that wheat whiskey out of, because it would be all wheat grown on their property minus the malt they're getting in. Mm-hmm. And they can call that an estate whiskey now under the new laws. So that's where this is coming from. That's what it's stemming from, which, I mean, at the end of the day, you need some of these big people like Jim Beam and Maker's Mark in here, because these things don't run for free. And you need some people with big money, and small distilleries, they could all band together and they still won't make enough money to support this thing. So that's why you need some of the bigger distillers in here. I'm guessing Beam will be working on projects as well, because they're not just paying to be a part of this and then not going to be doing anything themselves where they can put an estate whiskey alliance out there. So I'm sure sometime we'll see what that's going to be coming down the road out of Beam. But yeah, that's what Makers has decided to do with the wheat that the test wheat they grow on the property there is to make their own wheat whiskey and then be able to call it an estate whiskey is what's coming out of this. So a lot of good with it. It's nice to have some truth in the marketing behind it and something that you actually have to do to be able to call something what it is, and stop hopefully from some of these bigger places that aren't really doing anything that matters with farming from calling it estate whiskey or grain to glass or whatever the hell they want to call it. So that's my education, and this isn't an April 1st education. That's actual real news. So.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of moving parts here, and I think there's still a lot that needs to be discussed and figured out with this whole deal. And I would like to even see them go a bit further and create some kind of classification for the distilleries like Whiskey Acres and Frey Ranch that are actually growing all their own grain and then distilling their own grain. Because, yeah, it's not that hard. As we saw, Heaven Hill comes out with a grain and glass out of nowhere, and then Maker's Mark is starting this too. But I know the Maker's Mark thing's been in the works for a while. We were there about 2 or 3 years ago, and they told us how they were getting all into buying more land and doing more farming. And so this is, I know, been in the works for a while from Maker's Mark, but and it will be fun to taste their wheat whiskey, estate whiskey. And I think it kind of makes bourbon and American whiskey kind of stand up a little bit more and give a little better classification when you compare it to the wine world. Estate really means something. So I think it's good, but I think we're some moving parts away from getting to where this classification needs to be.
Yeah, and this is all like within about the last calendar year where stuff's made, because we didn't even really start when I was at Whiskey Acres. Like, this wasn't even really talked about until summer. And then we started hopping on some meetings with this and getting people in here. So the founding members behind it, I actually didn't find on their website where it is. They have Black Fox Farm Distillery, Heaven Hill, Hill Rock Makers, Peterson Farms, which is a very big farming company. They're the ones that do a lot of the farming for Heaven Hill. Thousand Acres Distilling, University of Kentucky and Western Kentucky. And then in terms of distilleries that are on board as alliance members are Frey Ranch, Jephthah Creed, Old 55 Distillery, Whiskey Acres. And then there's a couple other adjacent, like Lallemand Biofuels and Distilled Spirits, which is a supplier of like yeast and your different enzymes and things like that. Zach Cooperage, Distilled Spirits Council of America, or the United States. So that's what's filling out so far, but it's giving a little bit more awareness to actually estate grown or estate distilled products in the industry. But there's going to be a lot of changes. Like I said, this is super new. There's probably going to be a lot of changes. I mean, until even 4 months ago, I think it was after the first of the year, they still didn't have an actual definition. They were still going back and forth on the definition they were going to post. So, I mean, that's how new this is it took them 6 months to get to a point where they could agree on what the definition of estate distilled meant in whiskey.
Yeah. I mean, I'm glad that it's like finally moving forward, because I think this is a really good differentiator, for these distilleries, and the products that are going to qualify for it from the large distilleries. It's like, whether it, matters or not, it's something that, will help kind of maybe regenerate some interest in the market, which is good.
Yeah, I mean, it's needed because obviously whiskey's market's changing a little bit. And Jake, you can talk to this more from your side of things. But on terms of the wine that you guys have, that you guys sell at Gold Eagle, like how many people that come in that are wine people are looking for specifically estate distilled wines, because that's been a very successful, I guess I don't want to really say marketing campaign, but it's been a
Hmm.
very big thing in the industry that's made wineries stand out and has helped a lot of wineries that do all their own stuff.
Yeah, I think the estate thing appeals to a lot of wine drinkers, and I think it mostly appeals to if you're a really big fan of a certain winery. Most of these big wineries, they've grown so big and they can't keep up with their own vineyards because their vineyards produce a certain amount every year, and as soon as they outsell those cases, they need to get grapes from somewhere else. So a lot of the big wineries are buying grapes in bulk from other vineyards and wineries that they trust. But then, if you're a fan of that winery, you look forward to getting their estate release, because that is truly not only their winemakers and their entire process and putting the wine together, but it's their own grapes that they grew on the property. And we know with wine, there's a lot more that goes into the terroir and everything to do with those grapes, the elevation, climate, soil makes a big difference in the wine. So you can definitely tell a difference between those, and the vineyards are usually cared for a little bit more than if they're just buying bulk grapes from somewhere else. So it'll be interesting to see if bourbon people have that same appreciation, because Heaven Hill Grain and Glass, for example, I think most people were super excited when it came out, but then we're a little bit disappointed when they tasted it. Not that the whiskey was bad, but it was 6 year old for
$93.
$100 a bottle, where you can get the Heaven Hill 7 year bottled and bond for $50.
with not much of a distinguishment in taste or quality.
Yeah, I mean the grain doesn't have as much character. As grapes. I think we can
Yeah.
agree on that. Like the grain definitely matters. I'm not saying the grain doesn't matter, but when you compare grapes that have been growing on vines for 20 plus years, sometimes 50 plus years, and then you go to corn, which Dan might disagree, but it's a pretty simple grain, and I know there's a lot of other moving parts to it, but you're distilling it, so you're just not getting as much as you would from when you make wine out of grapes.
Well, and like when you're comparing the terroir of yellow dent corn and yellow dent corn, there's not going to be much of a difference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so one thing is, in terms of like the yellow dent corn differences, we've talked about that, where, I mean, we're really talking about 3 to 4 different types of corn, because it all stems back from breeding programs decades and decades ago, centuries ago. I guess before I get into my thing, Jake, do you want to, if people have never heard the word terroir, what that specifically means when we're talking, when you say the word terroir, especially in wine, what's that relating to?
I mean, just the land, the climate, the soil, like everything that's affecting the grapes and the growing, like all that plays into a major effect on what the wine is going to eventually taste like. So,
Yeah.
it's really fun in wine to taste. One winery might release. Ken Wright, for example, Washington Winery, they release single vineyards of their Pinot Noir. So it's made the same exact way, but they're naming each, probably have like 15 to 20 plus different Pinot Noirs, and each one is from a specific vineyard that they own, and they taste completely different because they're different elevation, they're different soil. The vines have been there for various different times. So that all makes a huge difference, where I don't think that difference carries over too much in whiskey like it does in wine. Sure, it's gonna taste a little different, but not nearly as much as wine.
Yeah.
Well, and it's why it's vintages in wine are so important, and like certain ones are so sought after, is because certain growing seasons in a certain year were like particularly spectacular, and produced really good grapes. Where like, I think it's
Like
I
you
know
said, you can get
whiskey
yellow dent
acres.
corn from whatever farmer, and it's probably not
Yeah.
going to make a big difference in the grand scheme of things. When the
Mhm.
barrel, you're getting most of the flavor from the barrel and the aging.
Yeah.
The variety of yellow dent corn isn't going to change too much in the flavor. That's one thing that's already been studied. Like as we talked about before, I think Rob said like as he was doing his thesis when he was going to Harriet Watt was he was kind of doing something with different varieties of yellow dent corn, and an article came out about the different flavors of yellow dent or different varieties of yellow dent don't really yield too much difference. Where he then switched to the different varieties of corn, so the different popcorns, things like that they've used at Whiskey Acres. I know when we go back to our conversation with Raj, he's pushing getting onto vintages in the whiskey industry. And my counteraction to what you're saying, Jake, about the terroir and does it matter with whiskey or not, I would say that, okay, so I know a little bit about plants, but I'm not going to claim to be a botanist here. But just from my college and everything, I have a little decent understanding of it. The one big difference between a grape and a corn, and why I would say that climate matters a ton with how the grain is produced for corn, is those grapes have that same grapevine's been in that field for 50 to 100 years. That's producing grapes for those wines. You have 1 year for corn to grow, so 1 year of climate completely matters of how that corn is going to be produced and how those kernels are going to form, the different amino acids, the different protein strings you're going to get are very heavily influenced by that year because that's the only year that corn has to grow. So I still think that's a big thing. It's something we haven't focused on too much.
No, and I mean I think you're onto something there, but I also think the fact that you're distilling the grain
That's going to have a big impact.
versus turning it into wine, and
Right.
we know because of Armagnac that vintages do matter.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you or distilling doesn't necessarily take away the flavor from that specific grain, because Armagnac is distilled wine and the different vintages taste completely different.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think with grain, um, we probably haven't gotten there yet because nobody really does vintages. And it will be exciting to see if other companies start doing what Bacta is doing and start labeling their bourbons with vintages. And
Same as Whiskey Acres
Yeah.
on the bib.
okay, I mean, I guess yeah, bottled and bond is kind of pretty much the same way. I
Because they
mean,
have
one
Chattanooga does it too, though
they
they're
have
not
the
estate grown.
yeah
But
the
yeah, but I know you guys do, but nobody really. It's sad that they don't, but nobody really pays too much attention to
yep
the the
no
season or the year. Most people just pay attention to the fact that it was from one
mm-hmm.
season.
Yep
And I don't think they realize, you can take 5 bottled and bonds from the same distillery, and that'd be a fun little flight right there.
right. And I mean and that's what our bottle and bond, or not ours. I'm not there anymore. That's what the Whiskey Acres bottle and bond has, is on the tax stamp. It has the year that it was harvested, or the year that it was harvested. The grain was harvested. So every bib will have a different year on it. So even if you go look at your bottle and bond rise and things, it'll show on the tax stamp the year that the grain was grown. So that's kind of been our little nod.
Yeah,
But
that's cool.
obviously, you can only do that with bottled and bond, or I guess not technically, but you could do it with anything as long as you had the able to back it up and prove it. But yeah, and I mean the state alliance, Whiskey Alliance is doing things. Is there you have to send in like a lot of things that you're paying for is you got to send in all the information. They got to verify that everything was a state. You got to be able to prove all this stuff.
do they send auditors?
Yeah, it's a pretty small group.
Good.
It's gonna be tight knit. But at the same point, like we're doing research projects and things with them as well too.
Yeah, and that's
A
pretty
lot of the
cool,
other
too.
distilleries are going to be doing research projects. They're trying to get a better understanding of this. This is very, very early on. I think they're still trying to figure out where this is all going to lead to and what this is all going to do. And a lot of this other stuff will be sorted out as this program continues to grow. But it's a very hands-on, active thing. I mean, I mean, I've been on Zoom calls for I have no idea no reason why or idea why they had me on with some of these, but I was in part of them to hear what was going on. I think it was just to have an outsider's ears listening to things to seeing if I was catching anything that they were missing. But it's something that they're very controlling over. I mean, it took a lot just to be able to get in. I mean, they audited us before we could even join. They had people out to look at the farm and look at the process and look at the setup and everything. So it will be, if I'm not sure when those, I think it should be coming soon because I know the sticker's out. Eventually, I think labels, they might be built into a lot of people's labels instead of just a sticker, but there will be an Estate Whiskey Alliance thing. But leading it back to Maker's Mark is, I think that's the main reason they want to do this. And I'm guessing that's probably what their original goal was too. I'm going to say that it wouldn't surprise me if some of the smaller craft distilleries saw these big names that were also part of it and thought that they were just going to try and screw everybody over. But I'm pretty sure well beforehand, Makers already knew what they were planning on doing with that 100 acres of wheat that they have on their property. Was they probably weren't spending the whole farm that they could put 10 pounds of their own wheat into one mash bill that makes 1,000 barrels and call it estate distilled. Like, I'm pretty sure they were aware that that wasn't going to fly. Maybe just some small distilleries getting up in arms about big people could have been part of the issue. But,
but I mean, yeah, I think transparency is good. If you want the industry to expand and grow and the community to grow, transparency is a great way to, give people the information that they want, and kind of pique people's interest. So yeah, I'm glad that this group exists, and is providing some of that. Like we talked about, Tequila Matchmaker, was doing this before they got raided by the Mexican government and shut down. It's good to see that there's a similar kind of vetting process for the estate grown claim, and some rules wrapped around it.
And I think the goal is to have this be a thing for Scotch and make this be not just a U.S. thing, but a national thing.
I mean, there's a few different Scotch distilleries that are doing this too. So that would be another good way to expand that type of program for sure.
Because I don't drink nearly as much Scotch and Irish whiskey and things, but I know that there's some that use the estate word quite a bit on their Scotch, that are true old, some of these old Scotch distilleries, right, Jake? Or am I not?
I mean, off the top of my head, I can't think of specifically a state. Like, I almost want to say like some Macallans say that, but they're not. Right. They mean it in a different way.
Right.
But I mean, obviously, the big one that comes to mind is Kilchoman and Lockley. Yeah, I mean, those are the first two that come to mind for me. And Kilchoman calls himself a farm distillery.
Yeah.
Come to our Kilchoman masterclass in May. That's going to be a very good one. But yeah, it's a very cool thing. I would just like to see them kind of expand on this a little bit more, and give some better designations or classifications within the estate distilled.
Yeah. That I'm sure is coming. It's still very, very early into this, but
like, can you put 100% estate distilled?
See, that'll be interesting to see. But I know their biggest thing is just starting off with the classification of estate.
But like, if you were to join the alliance, if Whiskey Acres is like, all right, we're part of this alliance, we got our sticker, but we're going to put our label now is going to say 100% estate distilled.
Right.
Like, would they let that fly? Would they like that?
Yeah. I do know that part of this is going to be that you're not going to be able to use estate on your labeling unless you're part of the Estate Whiskey Alliance. I believe that's one of the things that they're going through right now. Is that if you're going to use estate, you have to be part of the Estate Whiskey Alliance. That's what they're, or at least that's what they're trying to work through.
And that label applies to all American whiskeys, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe not even whiskey.
No, it's a State Whiskey Alliance, so it'd be for whiskey.
Okay.
So American single malts, rye,
Wheat.
Yeah.
wheat whiskey.
So that's where the industry is heading. It'll be interesting to see how this develops throughout the years. I mean, it's not going to be an overnight change. It's going to be a slow transition, but it's good to see like a lot of the bigger estates that we actually know are estates, like Hill Rock, Frey Ranch, being part of it. Because for a while, Frey Ranch didn't have their name on it. And the other downside is too is like a lot of the true estate distilleries are very small craft distilleries out there, and it's not cheap to be part of the State Whiskey Alliance if you're not selling a decent amount of whiskey. Is the downside to it, which is going to hurt a lot of small distilleries that can't afford it. I mean, I don't remember the exact price. I know it's somewhere closing in on $10,000 a year to be a part of it.
Jeez.
Which, if you're a small distillery, that's a lot of money that's going to come straight from your profits just to be able to continue to call yourself a state distilled now. So I know there's going to
be tiered fees based on how much you produce.
Yeah, I agree. That should it should definitely be like a percentage based.
Yeah. But no, as of now, that's not it. I know that's one thing that Whiskey Acres was fighting for. Is it's why are we paying the same thing Makers is
right
part of this? So.
And only 1% of their estate whiskey is estate grown.
Yeah, so I would doubt it's not even 1%.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that's what's kind of going on that end. We haven't talked on that side in a while. I wish I was still at Whiskey Acres to have some more information on it. I do swing in and talk to those guys and get some updates. I know a couple weeks ago they were down in Kentucky for a few days for meetings just specifically on this at the Jim Beam Institute at University of Kentucky with all these meetings. So I'll continue to get as much information as I can on that. But it's definitely a change that's growing inside the industry, which is good because we've talked about it for so long. Whiskey originally started like way back before the Bib Act of all the shady stuff you could do to whiskey and call it whiskey. And now you're seeing all this weird marketing or manipulative marketing coming out with some of these things.
Yeah, wasn't March was Bottled in Bond month, wasn't it?
I think so. I think it was.
Yeah, March 3rd is Bottled in Bond Day.
Is it 1892 or somewhere?
The first consumer protection laws in America.
Yeah.
Keeping it real with making it about whiskey.
God bless this country. Yeah, so it was fun to reach back and talk about that. Jake, I know you said Coleman will be back at Gold Eagle for a tasting. I was at the last one. It was a good one. Lock Lee was there not too long ago, or are they coming up as well too?
No, Lock Lee was last year.
Yeah.
Don't have anything on the books for them right now. The cool thing about this Kilhoman tasting, the first one was great, but we had a local brand rep who sells Kilhoman do the tasting. Now we have somebody actually coming out from the distillery. So this one is going to be very exciting. Lots of good tastings coming up. I would definitely recommend checking out the events page. Some really exciting Scotch ones, but also some really exciting bourbon ones. We're going to be doing a blind smoke wagon tasting. We're going to be doing Beautiful and the Damned. Hoping we will have Kevin on the podcast, who is the founder of Beautiful and the Damned at some point. We'll be doing a master class with them at the end of April. Lots of really exciting events coming up in the next couple weeks. I know, Dan, you guys are excited to come to the Inchdarney one.
I'm excited to come to that one.
Which nobody probably knows about, but I only know the tip of the iceberg about this distillery, and it's like blowing my mind what they're doing. Definitely. And
don't spoil it. You got to show
I'm not going to spoil it. Yeah, you got to show up to know, but the guy, Ian Palmer, is like one of the brainchilds of whiskey. Like he's mentored and helped many distilleries, including Jura and Bruichladdich. And I think the list goes on for like 15, 20 distilleries, kind of like the Pickerel of Scotch. But he's going to be here doing a little presentation. Dan, I'm surprised that you're so excited for it because their only product in the U.S. right now is a rye Scotch.
I'm not excited about it. I said the master distiller at Whiskey Acres, when I dropped the name, he instantly like vomited tons of information I didn't even care about. So he's excited, and I want to get up there.
Even if you don't like rye or Scotch or don't love either one, I think his presentation alone is going to be worth attending. And he's also going to be bringing some different experimental things that they're working on because they only have one product in the U.S. so far. So it's going to be just a cool opportunity to taste some things that you'll never probably see again or get to try again.
Nice. And where can people see these events and buy tickets to these events?
We've got an events tab on our website, goldeaglewine.com, or download our app on the Apple App Store, Google Play Store, and visit our events tab there. But yeah, make sure you follow us on Instagram at Gold Eagle Wine. Follow us on Facebook at Gold Eagle Spirits. See what we've got going on. And throwing it back to Bourbon Matters.
Yeah, I'm buying my Beautiful and the Damned
nice
ticket right now.
Gotta make Jake make a purchase on each episode.
I was waiting for the cha-ching to come.
I closed it out so that I can have a little better internet service here.
So you can listen to us on Spotify, Apple, or Google Podcasts, or pretty much any other podcast platform. Watch us on Spotify and YouTube. Make sure you like, subscribe, comment. Check out our last episode. Was our last episode of the Shopping Cart Challenge?
No, that was 2 episodes ago.
Two episodes ago, Shopping Cart
was
Challenge. Leave a comment about what your ideal shopping cart would be. Comment on this episode if you think estate grown is cool or a bunch of dog shit.
Yeah, let us know your thoughts.
Yeah.
Let us know some other topics you want us to discuss.
Yeah. Let us know if you're looking forward to seeing us at tastings or something. I don't know.
No one's looking forward to that.
I don't know. They look forward to seeing
come
me.
Up to me at every
I was gonna say they look forward to
every
seeing
tasting.
Jake,
Somebody says
not
hi to
us
me.
idiots.
No, it's true. People do like they'll come up to me like, "Is that the other Jake from the podcast?" I'm like, "Yeah, go say hi."
And like,
He's like, "Yeah, Dan's such a dick." I'm like, believe me. That was the one thing I
It's not
forgot.
a shtick. It's not a shtick. Like, let's just throw that out there.
For clarity, it's not. But my one last week was dumb whiskey decisions. And my biggest dumb whiskey decision was asking Dan to join this podcast. So just to
wait a week to
clarify
try and think
that.
of that comeback. It was totally worth it. It was so good. Good job. I'm glad that's the best you could come up with in a week. How about you go read some more April Fool's news?
We proved that article is real, so I don't know what you want from me.
Give it a week.
All right, gentlemen.
We'll follow up. We'll get answers.
All right. Cheers, boys.
Cheers.